Hey guys, and welcome back to Hoosier Hardware. And while the PC tech space on YouTube may be completely on fire right now, I am gonna avoid that section of my sort of channel and embrace a section of the channel that I've only recently started to get into a little bit more, and that is dealing with just general streaming gear. In this case, we have a condenser microphone, and when I stumbled across this thing on Amazon, I sort of loved it, actually. I love the look of this microphone. This, by the way, is a Boytone BT-68SM. This kind of gives sort of the vibes that one of those blue microphones has had in the past, where you have the condenser capsule on top, and you've got this sort of unique body look to it. And I was super excited about it because not only does it have a cool aesthetic, but it has this really nice pop filter built in to the housing of the mic itself. I was just really excited to get my hands on this thing, understanding because it's kind of an off-brand, no-name company, you're not likely getting the top end of audio quality. But with streamer gear in particular, a lot of times you're not only concerned with the quality, you're actually also concerned with the aesthetics of things, and this is unique for its price point. And just so we're clear on that price point, this thing was $60 or right at $60, and it has been $60 for a while on Amazon. Its price does not seem to fluctuate a whole lot. So what you get in the box, just so we're all on the same page, you get the shock mount, which actually is okay once you make a modification, and more on that here in just a little bit. You get the mic as well as the pop filter, which you are absolutely going to want to use because the actual housing around the capsule itself has no foam or any sort of plosive mitigation whatsoever, other than just a little bit of wire mesh in there. So you're definitely going to want to use the pop filter, but this mic is designed around that in general. It's built into the housing with this very nice mount, which you can remove if you super want to, but it's designed around the idea of using the pop filter. And by the way, it just pops out of its little bracket, but you can also remove the bracket itself. Once again, though, you're definitely going to want to use it, and I'll give you a quick test because you're going to want to use this mic with the pop filter because it's quite prone to plosives if you don't. And once you put it back on, it is less prone to plosives than it was before, and hopefully you can get that from that little audio sample there. Speaking of the actual audio quality, while we're here talking about it, you've been listening to this microphone with no processing whatsoever. It is a condenser mic, so it does have phantom power. I'm running it through a Rodecaster Pro 2, so excellent preamps, and it's running at 27 decibels out of the Rodecaster, though I'll put on the screen any sort of decibel adjustment that I have to make in Premiere Pro to get the levels correct. But other than the levels adjustment, there is absolutely no post-processing going on whatsoever. So if you're liking what you see so far and what you're hearing so far, great. The problem is this mic should be avoided, and there's actually several reasons you should be avoiding this mic. Not at all cost, but at this cost, at $60 of cost, you should absolutely not purchase this mic. All right, so I want to go through all of the issues, or at least the issues that jumped out to me from the get-go. First and foremost, this shock mount, I had to make an adjustment. And if you have something like this on hand, this one's not a deal breaker. So in the sort of lug here that secures the shock mount's position, it has a little red washer. The problem is this washer is not thick enough to actually make this a secure point. So with the stock washer, this thing would droop quite severely. And in fact, even with my adjusted washer, it still droops a little bit if you give it much tension, but you can actually tighten it down a little bit. Like, it's actually come loose a little bit, so I can tighten it there. So the adjustment is really simple, though. If you have your own washers, you find a washer that matches roughly the size. This one would be close enough. And really what you're looking for here is the one that I replaced the red washer with. This one's about twice as thick. All right, and once I did that just tiny modification, just unscrewed this lug, put in the new washer into the mechanism there, it works just fine. So as much as I hate that they cheaped out on a washer that's just too thin to do the job because the mic itself is a little bit hefty, it's not a big deal because it's a few pennies, provided that you have these washers laying around. If you don't have washers laying around, you could probably get some other material, I don't know, possibly even like cardboard or something, and put it together with the washer, just something to make that connection a little bit more firm and add a little bit of friction there. So really cheap, but ultimately not a big problem. Other than that, though, the shock mount is just fine. It does exactly what you would want a shock mount to do. The next problem, though, is one, it's a bit of a design problem, but not one you're probably going to run into. If you are someone, though, that gets really up close onto the mic, because the bracket for the pop filter is all metal, it has just a tendency to vibrate just a little bit. And if you're right up on the mic and you're puffing out a lot of air hitting it, it might actually vibrate just a little. Not a big deal, because if you're staying at a few inches away, like you probably should be, that's going to be fine. I wanted to mention it, though. This is where we get into the big problems. Okay, let me see if I can make this thing rattle, because I noticed this right off the bat. You might be able to catch that in the recording here. If not, I apologize. There is a definite rattle there. So what you're actually hearing there, and I'll show you in just a moment, inside the housing, there is a circuit board that has 4 screw holes, of which Boytone is using 1. So the circuit board is just sort of flopping around in there, and when you bump the mic, it's hitting where it's supposed to actually be screwed into. It's just a metal, and it's just making that vibrating sound. The other issue is there's a metal plate in there that adds rigidity to the entire housing. It also has 4 screw holes, of which I believe they're using 3. So they're missing half of the screws in securing the internals, or at least the internal part of the housing here. Completely unacceptable. And I'll go ahead and take this apart and I can show you. So as you can see, this circuit board, let me block my face so the camera focuses there. That top left screw on the screen, that's where the circuit board's tied in. It's otherwise not tied. And then on the backside, this metal plate that I was talking about, you can see up in the top right, there's a screw missing there as well. So 3 are missing on this side. Again, free to flop around, and 1 on this side. I want to talk a little bit about why that's a deal breaker. So if you like the sound, and by the way, this is a Mayano PD100 that you're listening to right now. This is a dynamic mic, so a little bit different than the condenser. If you're looking for a condenser mic, obviously the dynamic is not what you're looking for. But this thing, as of recording, is right at $40. So it's about $20 cheaper, and this one has no rattle. Granted, does not come with a shock mount, but you can pick up a universal shock mount that'll work very well on this thing for about another $10 to $15. So even with a shock mount, this thing's going to be a little bit cheaper, and you're going to avoid the quality control issues that this mic has. And if you're really looking for just a cheap condenser mic, you can do something like the NW700 or 800 that I have here from Newer, and this thing's around $20. And granted, I actually do think the Boytone sounds slightly better. I'll actually give you an audio sample of the NW800 here. So again, this is with no post-processing whatsoever. This is just from the NW800. I do think the Boytone sounds slightly better, but it's certainly not better in my mind. I actually think the Mayano sounds better. It's certainly not better than the $40 dynamic mic, at least in a quality standpoint. From a build quality standpoint, 100% not any better than even this one. And it's kind of one of those things. If you're going to buy a cheap microphone, there are too many reasonably good options out there for you to be spending money on something that has super questionable build quality. So although I like the aesthetic a lot, and to be honest, if you do really like the sound of this thing, you might have some screws laying around that work with this. You could actually just use some hot glue to secure that circuit board, and it would almost certainly be just fine. It just makes me really uncomfortable that it's such an obvious quality control issue. I don't know how that slips by, that it just doesn't have all of the screws installed. But if you can get over the quality control issues and you really do like the aesthetic, then yeah, I guess maybe it could be worth it to individuals. For me, though, the quality control is a major problem. There's too many other good options out there, several of which I've looked at on the channel. So I would recommend you kind of... might have just broken it. I would recommend that you pass on the Boytone and find another option out there that's going to fit into your budget well and is also going to be a mic that is going to be built much better than the Boytone. So those are my thoughts on it. I definitely actually have a big question for any of you out there that own this mic, the Boytone BT-68SM. Unscrew the housing for me if you feel comfortable with it, and check. I am super curious if this is a widespread issue or if this just happens to be mine. I'm super curious, and I would love to get more of a sample size than just the one that I have. Otherwise, if there are specific other microphones that are budget friendly, and by budget friendly I mean sub $100 microphones, whether they be XLR or USB mics or both for that matter, because that's a thing. Let me know in those comments down below mics that you might actually want me to take a look at. If you like the video, follow me down below. Like, share, subscribe, all those things super helpful for the channel. Otherwise, YouTube's gonna queue up a few more videos from the channel for you to watch. And I am Shane with Who's Your Hardware. I will see all of you in the next one.